we're not here to talk about 1982. We are at 11 o'clock. I think all of you were here before, but I'll do the spiel again. My name is Gary Mitchell. I am the co-director of the American Sci-Fi Classics Track and DragonCon. I am a part of the Good to Be a Geek Network, where I am the producer and co-host of a podcast of Amontillado, a horror podcast. It's a terrifyingly good time. And I have stickers and postcards, and you, sir, are?
I'm Bill Bridges. I'm a writer and game designer. I used to work with White Wolf doing Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Apocalypse, and some of them. And currently doing my own science fiction role-playing game called Fading Suns. And as you found out in the last panel I was in, I worked on some Star Trek games too. I wish I could say I worked on a Twilight Zone game, but no one's come to do that.
Twilight Zone would be a wild game.
It's an anthology show, so it'd be kind of hard to stitch together.
It would be a one-shot.
Yeah, exactly. You have a series of different scenarios.
Yes, but we are here to talk about the 1983, the Twilight Zone, the movie.
Oh, the movie?
Yes.
Oh, the movie.
Because it is the anniversary, 83 to now, is
Well, they
for
reached
years.
the classic episodes, so I know at least those two.
Oh yeah, well that's the thing is, so I didn't see it in the theater because I didn't get to see a lot of movies in 83 as a 12-year-old, but I did get to see it when it hit cable. What about you?
I did see it in the theater when it came out.
Okay, cool.
I didn't bother.
Oh, I was so into it then because I was really into filmmaking, and you had John Landis, Spielberg, George Miller, Joe Dante for crying out loud. So yeah, I had to see it.
Yeah, I mean, for one thing, it was a celebration of the Twilight Zone, which is to this day one of the best, strongest TV series ever. It's one of the best explorations of the medium, of science fiction. I'd say 98% of the episodes still hold up.
Oh yeah.
And the idea of them turning into a movie is something I think has been kicked around in Hollywood for a while. And I think this is about the best idea they could have hit on at the time, instead of just adapting, instead of dragging one of these stories out to movie length, which I think would have absolutely sucked. I mean, because I have trouble sometimes with some of the 1-hour-long episodes of The Twilight Zone. I think The Twilight Zone works best in that 30-minute punch.
My example is always, you look at M. Night Shyamalan's The Village.
Yes.
It's a really good Twilight Zone episode. It's not a good feature film. If it had been half an hour, it would have been perfect.
Yeah. Then movie critics suck. Okay, now you're not exactly wrong, but put the hammer down. But yeah, so you get 5 really, really good directors and get them to pick like their favorite Twilight Zone episodes and do an anthology movie, which we don't get a lot of, but most anthology movies at least are watchable, especially because they're in, they're out. There's the Tales from the Crypt one, there's more, that's a whole other panel.
Well, they're a hard sell. Back then, I think people were more willing to try that sort of thing out in the theater, but now that stuff goes straight to TV.
Yeah. Right. So is there anyone here who has not seen it?
I just don't like the original episode. I've not seen the movie.
Okay. But everybody else has.
I'm not worried about being spoiled though at this point.
Oh, yeah.
40 years has passed the set line date. I'm worried about seeing it. People get upset about spoilers of books that are 50 years old. Like, just shut up, get off the list, and go read the damn book and then come back.
Yeah. But I actually, the one original piece is the opening vignette with Dan Aykroyd and Albert Brooks. And that is a fun Twilight Zone-esque story.
I'll forget that. Maybe it's screaming somewhere.
It's got a clever bit where they're talking about old Twilight Zone episodes, and they mention Burgess Meredith by name.
Oh, yeah.
And then when the narration hits, because Rod Serling's gone, they've got Burgess Meredith doing the Twilight Zone intro, which I thought was really cool.
Well, and it's also fitting because he was in, what, like 75 Twilight Zone episodes?
He was a busy character actor at that point.
Yes, he was. Yeah, well, Twilight Zone was a lot like the Batman show, where it was a good recurring gig if you could get it. Because there were movie stars and there were actors who worked for a living.
Good for writers too.
Yes. But the 5 stories they adapt,
Which is 4. And then plus that intro sequence is kind of the 5th, because it comes back around again at the very end.
I'll have to watch this.
You threw me off when you said 5. I was like, oh my god, wait.
Well, counting the opening bid.
Yeah.
And it was directed by John Landis, so he did the opening bit and the first story.
So the first story we launch into, if I'm not mistaken, is the, what was the name?
Is it the cornfield one, or?
No, that's in there. but
That's
it's-
in there.
And then there's the Shatner one.
It's about a bigot who gets his comeuppance basically by being flown through time back to
Time out.
Nazi Germany, and then into Vietnam, and back to Nazi
I
Germany.
think I know that one.
Unfortunately, during the filming of it, they
Was that the one where the guy got killed? Oh, yeah.
Vic Morrow, the main
Vic
actor.
Morrow and the 2 kids.
Yeah, helicopter accident
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah,
That was sad.
yeah, so,
It was a pretty reckless film shoot, is the problem.
yeah, there was you can look it up, it was ugly, there were a lot of safety bits, there were cut corners. The basic gist of it though is there was a helicopter that was supposed to be flying over as Vic and these kids are running through the paddies in Vietnam. And the helicopter came off the rigging and, yeah, it almost ruined John Landis' career and he never recovered from it.
Yeah.
Well, he luckily didn't go to jail.
Yeah, he was very lucky not to go to jail. And, you know, he's done stuff since then, but his career trajectory was, you know, because he'd done it in London. He did this.
Well, after that, he did have Coming to America, so,
Right.
but in a sense, those were films for hire for somebody else. They weren't really his vision anymore at that point.
Yeah, but the episode was back there and.
But they were able to stitch together a story off of what they'd already filmed, plus a few little extra bits. And it has a good classic Twilight Zone kind of, ending to the story. With the guy being shoved onto a train heading to a concentration camp, and outside the slats, he sees his buddies coming out of the bar that he had just come out of, and he's yelling at them. Of course, they can't hear him. He's somewhere else, shipped off and away.
Yeah, and it's very much, he goes through the concentration camp thing. He gets, lands in rural Alabama and has to deal with the Klan, and then he jumps into the Vietnam War. And again, it's the whole Twilight Zone teaching a jerk a lesson.
And the actor was Vic Morrow, who unfortunately died, but he's the father of Jennifer Jason Leigh.
And then the second segment was a remake of Kick the Can, directed by Spielberg.
Yep.
Basically, another sort of a lesson.
Yeah, it's one of the sweet Twilight Zone episodes
Yeah.
where nothing horrid happens like in the next two
Right.
and stuff. Very Spielbergian. You've got Drew Barrymore,
so.
little girl, and Scatman Crothers.
I love Scatman Crothers. He was an icon of the 80s.
Yeah, he was great.
On Kung Fu.
Yeah, I was about to say.
That's the 70s, thank
Number
you.
one.
Sorry, I'm old, what can I say?
That's what I knew him from as a kid.
Yeah,
Yeah. Hong Kong Phooey, Jazz on Transformers. You knew his voice when he was on something.
very distinctive.
Of course, The Shining. too.
Yes. But yeah, and it's definitely the nice little lesson,
Yeah.
remember your childhood without getting lost in it, but at the same time, don't let yourself grow old.
It's that Bradbury-esque sort of story of a celebration of both nostalgia, but also, the realization that old age has its own wonders too.
Yes. Although personally, I've had the chance to go back. If I'm 78 years old and have the chance to go back and be an 8-year-old kicking a can around, I'm going with the can.
Yeah, I'm with the kid who turned into Peter Pan, basically. Flies off kind of at the end. That's the implication, is that he flies off.
And then the segment 3 is the cornfield,
Yeah.
which,
That's the Bill Mooney one in the original, right?
right.
It's a scary episode.
Joe Dante directing, which I love Joe Dante as a director. He
Me
is
too.
so oddball. He's one of the few people that understands Looney Tunes. He's one of the few, he knows how to embrace horror and comedy, Gremlins.
Yeah, this is more that same kind of vibe. And it's got that great intermixing of there's on the TV, there'll be a cartoon and it's mirroring what's going on and stuff. It's all classic tunes that you grew up on.
Yeah. And I love the fact that Will Mummy gets a cameo. Bill Mumy.
Oh, yeah,
Original kid.
he's in the bar.
He's in the bar at the very beginning of the story. I was like, oh, that's a nice touch. And if you ever get a chance, it was the early 2000s remake of the Twilight Zone.
Oh, they did the sequel with
where they- yeah.
Billy Allen when we played
Yes.
the girl.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's really good.
I've not seen it.
Yeah.
I'll have to look for it.
Yeah, it's kind of a sidebar, but they've tried to resurrect the Twilight Zone 3 times now. There's the
Repealed
80s.
most recently,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. There was the 80s one, which
It's
Okay.
most-
so at its moment, some are good, some are not. The Harlan Ellison ones are.
Yeah.
That's Harlan. Then there was the 90s, early 2000s. I'm pretty sure it was early 2000s. And then the
Forrest
recent,
Whitaker, I think.
yeah, that's right. And then the recent Jordan Peele one, which I've watched like 3 episodes of, and I wasn't getting into it.
painful.
Yeah.
They get better as you go on.
Yeah, I want to give it a more try, but like I said, I watched like the first 2 and I wasn't feeling it, so
Yeah.
I need to go back. But it had what, 3 seasons?
Yeah.
Do you want to come up here and talk?
I'm good.
Okay. That's Anthony, everybody. Say
Yeah.
hi.
Hey, hi.
Hi, Anthony.
I guess I can.
It's up to you.
Yeah.
Tell people who you are as you come on up.
My name is, falls on the floor. No, Anthony Liggins. I'm the assistant director of this track.
Oh, well, what are you, Harm? Lurking in the background for?
Lurking in the
He's
back.
making sure quality control.
Making sure that this guy does what he's supposed to do. I'm also a co-host of the Fandom Hybrid podcast, which is a sort of pop culture, MCU genre podcast. It's very, very fun.
So of what we've discussed so far, do you have any commentary on like the intro skit or the first few?
Well, I remember seeing the 1983 movie.
Mhm.
I was a huge Twilight Zone fan growing up. I don't really remember a lot of episodes. I remember scenes from different episodes, but not whole episodes, because I haven't watched it recently. Last year, I watched all of the Jordan Peele Twilight Zone episodes,
Okay.
which, again, it starts kind of weird, but they get better as you go, and he kind of ties it all together.
Okay.
All of it is connected.
Oh, okay.
So,
That's
which is different than Twilight Zone.
Okay.
As far as the movie, I remember the accident happening,
mhm.
and I only remember the Spielberg one. I don't
The
remember
kid
the
can, yeah. Okay.
Well, the Joe Dante one also has a lot of his regular actors, like Kevin McCarthy,
Yeah.
who was also in Invasion of the Body Snatchers back in the 50s, and with a cameo also in the remake. too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Dick Miller, of course, he's in pretty much everything
Yeah.
Dante does. He's at the bar, the diner, sort of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's definitely a good reworking of that tale, because the original story, It's a Good Life, is still legitimately creepy
Yeah, yeah.
and scary about the whole having to cater to this kid that's basically a god.
Yep.
And that one, and it ends very unsettlingly with Rob going, "Yep, sucks for these people. Have a nice day." There's no real lesson. There's no real moral. These people are stuck, and it's just like that's what's terrifying about it. It's like, oh, great, we just got a little glimpse of what these people's life is.
Yeah,
Whereas this,
it ends almost like it could be a pilot for a show, where she's going off with a kid every week, teaching him how to use his god powers properly, like an Incredible Hulk sort of thing, each episode or something.
yeah, it would be an interesting show. It would be like trying to make. How do you make a god not be a dick? Someone who can do and wish and will into existence whatever they want, whatever they think of. How do you control that? That's terrifying.
Well, the kid just wants love, so pretty much just gives him what he wants, calms him down.
Yeah, and especially the fact that he can read your mind. So you better think those good thoughts. You better
It's a
think
good
those happy
thing.
thoughts.
It's a real
You're the good thing.
Yeah, that was a creepy little episode.
Mhm.
And the thing is, in the thing, he has a sister, he's taking her mouth away.
Yes.
And it ends, presumably she's been released like everybody else. That makes you think, well, what's the rest of the family like? How do you get these powers? Is it inherited in any way? Or
Yeah.
or nuclear accident? What? I don't know.
Ouch.
Yeah. And the sequel episode ends pretty much in a similar way, where this guy's grown up, he's got a daughter who has the same powers, and they both decide, hey, let's just go wander around the world and make it better.
Isn't one of the things that appeals about Twilight Zone, even the original ones, is that they sort of subverted your expectations,
Oh, yeah.
and they were subversive as well.
Yes, very much.
Mhm. Well, I mean, that was the whole point of the reason the Twilight Zone even exists, is Serling was doing Playhouse 90.
Yeah.
I always make sure, forget if it's 90 or whatever. But yeah, he was trying to tell these stories with a moral and get his point of view across. And he kept running into the sponsors going, well, you can't talk about racism, you can't talk about this, you can't talk about that. But then when he said, well, I'm going to do this weird sci-fi horror show, and it's about aliens, and they went, yeah, sure, fine. And so he was able to sneak those lessons in. And some of them were subtle. Like back there is kind of a subtle one. Stopover in Willoughby, I think, is a similar vein. You can't go home again.
Yeah.
And then
Is that the one
there's
with
the carousel.
yeah,
Yeah. And then there's the one, I am the midnight, color me black, where it's like, Sterling's like, hi, I have something I need to say. It's the one with where they're gonna hang the guy at dawn, basically because he's black.
Well, that's all
And,
right.
yeah, and dawn doesn't happen. It's a great episode, and it's a very stark examination of racism, especially for the time. It's one of my favorite episodes. And like I said, it's Serling, and this is one of the few times where Serling is just like, no, I'm gonna make sure you understand what I'm trying to tell you.
The first episode I ever saw when I was a kid, you'd all heard about the show in magazines, but they finally started, I guess, syndicating it on the station up in DC at an hour I could watch it. And I was expecting aliens instead, and this episode blew me away as a kid still. A little old lady who was afraid to go
Oh, Agnes
outside.
Moorehead?
Yeah.
One with Agnes?
And Robert Redford.
Oh, no, that's a different one.
Yeah, it's a different one.
Yeah.
That's a great one, though.
And she brings him in, he's wounded. She's so afraid of death, and it turns out he's dead.
Yeah.
And that really affected me a lot. Years later, I hear people talking on Neil Gaiman's Sandman and how death, oh, that's the first time we saw a kind death, or whatever. No, I don't so. Way back when.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, it's interesting, and let's jump to and then the final segment is, of course, the Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, where John Lithgow goes full ham.
Yeah, oh, totally.
Where there's the thing on the wing, and I love the design of the new Gremlin thing on the wing, where it's very Stan Winston, it's very Goblin-esque, it's slick. Because the original is
Goofy.
yeah.
A man in a suit.
It-
It
it-
looks like a Legato from Star Trek. But
Yeah, it's very goofy looking. I mean, it's terrifying that there's something on the wing that's screwing with William Shatner. But the one in the movie is a legit terrifying.
Yeah, and it's having fun ripping things out and throwing it into the bowling stuff.
Yeah, and they managed to keep one of the essential pieces where this guy has just come out of a mental hospital, basically. So you're not sure, is this real or is this just in his head?
Until the end.
Until the end.
It's realized. But it's George Miller who did, Mad Max and Fury Road and all that. So he's got a lot of his little
And the Pebble and the Penguin.
cameras. What's that?
And the Pebble and the Penguin.
No. But yeah, it's got a lot of his classic camera moves and frenetic and very well edited.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the scenes where Lithgow's looking out and sees this thing right there, for just a few frames, really quick, Lithgow was given these big, giant, googly, popped-out eyes. So, it's so fast you barely see it. Now, of course, you can pause it and watch it frame by frame. But when you're just seeing it in the theater, you just get this effect of his eyes really popping out without actually seeing it. Well, it's really kind of clever.
Yeah, and I love the way the story ended with he finally gets his hand on the gun, he shoots the window out, and gets pulled halfway out the window. And I love just the way the thing holds his face and kind of caresses, and you think it's going to rip his head off, and it just does the and flies off. And I loved also that again, practical effects because it's '83, we didn't have this stuff, but it's a great suit creature guy, and the way it lands on the wing, the way they have it move around, the way it flies off.
The way it flies off is great because it does that kind of spiraling off in a way. It's so cool.
Yeah.
And of course,
I was gonna say, I wonder how many kids watched that and became afraid to fly.
Oh yeah. It's like,
well,
oh great, now I don't have to just worry about crashing, I have to worry about why we're gonna crash.
well, one of the other funny things is at a certain point to calm himself down, he lights up a cigarette. You can't do that.
Yeah, you can't do that anymore.
And there are the ashtrays in the armchairs and all.
Yeah, I mean, we have a big difference and stuff like that.
Yeah, can we talk about the ludicrous idea of a smoking section on an airplane? It's a pressurized tube. The smoke's not gonna go, oh yeah, I gotta stop here, sorry.
Yeah, especially if you were in that last drugs non-smoking, let's go all those puffers.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, and Lithgow does a great performance. Like you said, George Miller has an incredibly wonderful, perverse sense of humor. Which, if you've watched Fury Road, if you've watched Mad Max, and Ed the Penguin, the guy knows how to kind of tweak people. And this for me, and I want to get you guys' opinions, of the four, it's the most Twilight Zone-y of the four tales.
I don't know if I'd say that, because like I said, Spielberg's is very Twilight Zone-y too, but it was a very different style of Twilight Zone. I certainly think it was the best. It was great to end on that one, because it's the most frenetic, it really hits your...
It's the anchor leg of the movie, yeah.
Yeah. And then the way it ends,
And then
too.
the tag, yeah.
What makes it hard is the different styles. It's hard to say if it's more or less Twilight Zone each one because there's just kind of different.
True. Yeah, so does anybody here have a favorite segment that you like of the four? As I just said mine.
Well, I was one of those kids that saw it in the movie.
Oh.
My father brought me because the year before he saw Creep Show
Oh.
with my grandfather, and he was telling me these stories. I'm like, oh, and then he's like, Twilight Zone was coming out. It's kind of the same thing. It's a whole bunch of different stories. I was like, oh, I want to see this in the movie theater. So it was amazing seeing it with him. And what I remember about that first segment is that later on after the movie, because I was 10 years old, he used it as a teaching segment of you just have to not be what I grew up like. You have to be better. Like that's why he loved watching Star Trek with us. That's why he viewed Twilight Zone as good TV. Like his generation screwed up, and he desperately wanted us to be better. And that's what good science fiction does. It forces you to think and be a better person. And that first segment did that, and every segment was very, very different. I think that's why that movie works so well, is because it went through all the different emotions. You were scared at some times, you were empathetic at other times, you were joyful at some times. So I mean, that's the choice of Twilight Zone episodes they chose for that movie were ingenious for not just going for the greatest hits.
Right.
And speaking of Star Trek, actually, has anybody seen the bit on 30 Rock from the Sun?
With William Shatner?
Yeah. Shatner arrives as...
The big giant head.
Yeah. But he took the plane in, and he says at one point that there was something on the wing. And John Lithgow said, that happened to me too.
It's one of the best gags on the show.
Yeah.
That's funny.
You were about to say?
I was going to say the opening and closing, because if you've ever ridden with somebody that doesn't know, seen the movie, but you run and you've never, and you turn to them and you go, you want to see something really scary?
Yep.
Those words, just, I mean,
Yeah, everyone
just
knows.
give you,
Yeah.
Well, and as a kid, I remember that scene creeping me out because I couldn't understand why, but it was very unsettling. It was like these two people and the one's being the dick about the lights and everything. But there was just, and I liked Dan Aykroyd because I I was a kid and I'd seen him on SNL and some other things. And when he does that turn and the wiggle, but when he turns around, he's the blue, whatever that is. And I remember that jump scare scaring the crap out of me. But what really stuck with me and made this stay in my head for years is when we pan out from the car and you hear that crunch. You get that wet crunching, it's like somebody eating lettuce. And I was just like, ah! That was worse than any gore shot they could have done. For me.
That was great.
Yeah. But then the tag at the end where he's the ambulance driver goes, you don't want to see something that.
When John Lithgow was taken away in the ambulance,
Yeah.
and it's Dan Aykroyd again, and he starts playing the same Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Mm-hmm.
I'll always view that song, think about it with that
The
movie.
Midnight Special.
Yeah, of course.
So that's pretty much all the segments of the movie. As I said, I personally think at least my favorite, is the remake of the Twilight, Terror 20,000 Feet.
Yeah, it's my favorite one also, although I'm really, really fond of the Joe Dante one also with the 3D cartoon creatures.
That rabbit is fucking scary. That thing that comes out of the TV is just terrifying.
It's great. But no, yeah, Nightmare at 35,000 feet is still.
Yeah, after thinking about it, I'd have to go with that one too. Because I was one of those kids who didn't want to fly. And I don't remember when Gremlins came out.
It was after this.
I think it was 84.
It was before.
It's right
I
around
think it was
there.
84.
Right after.
If only I had some way to look up.
No, it
So,
definitely wasn't
The
84.
reason
It
why
was a
this
Christmas
It wasn't
movie
before.
reference, wasn't it? It
Yeah.
was a Christmas movie.
kids in my kid brain connected.
But it actually showed up at Christmas
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'd seen some of Joe Dante's before.
Like
Gremlins is 84.
Christmas.
yeah.
So what did I
Yeah.
see of his before this thing? Oh, it would have been quite.
And another thing about this is, I grew up in the Northeast, and Channel 11 would have Twilight Zone marathons on constantly. So it would just be 24 hours of Twilight Zone. So, at least for certain segments of the population, this was just ingrained in us that expect the unexpected when you watch Twilight Zone. And for this movie to come out at the time it did, I think it was perfect.
I know the Joe Dante.
He done the Howling.
Oh, that would have been the one.
Oh, yeah.
Howling was 81.
Yeah, and he worked again with John Hora, who was a cinematographer, and he did on a lot of his things. Although interestingly, when he did Inner Space, the cinematographer was Andrew Laszlo, but John Hora is in Inner Space as the scientist
Oh,
who rides a little bicycle and stuff. And so he was playing.
that's the Dennis Quaid Martin Short movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I've seen that one, I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, I
It's a
actually,
fun movie.
It's a fun movie.
right before that one came out, I had the luck of meeting Andrew Laszlo. He had come to a local college, and it was not a college with a film course or anything, but I was in a separate college that had a film course, and so I was the only one asking him actual real questions. So he invited me lunch afterwards, and he was talking about it, but Inner Space hadn't come out yet. He mentioned he had done it, and that John Hora was playing in it. But I will mention it here because he and somebody had asked him about it, the scuttlebutt in Hollywood of the Twilight Zone disaster and stuff. And as somebody who'd worked in the industry all that time, he was convinced John Landis was fully at fault on that he was reckless, he shouldn't have been doing what he did, from what he had heard from people who had been on the set.
There's a reason for safety precautions. They're almost always there because somebody died.
They also weren't supposed to hire child actors. They were not supposed to have the children working at night. They
That
weren't
was
supposed to-
rampant throughout the early 80s.
Yeah.
That was a big deal, yeah.
He did everything wrong. Whereas Andrew Laszlo was also the cinematographer on Streets of Fire,
I love that.
which takes place almost solely at night, so they had to pretty much cover the entire street with a big giant tarp, so it was night all the time. He also did The Warriors, which is
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And the real tragic thing is the fact that those kids weren't even in the original script for the sequence.
Oh, really?
Yeah, originally it was just supposed to be Vic Morrow running through but the Warners, the producers were like, this guy's an asshole. We don't like him. We need to make him more sympathetic. So they came up with the idea of him rescuing these two orphans and added that in.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Wasn't the lawsuit just settled recently, like, in the past 6 months?
It wouldn't surprise me. Legal stuff can drag out for forever.
Especially in this country.
Yeah.
We haven't raised it to a fine art. I remember reading a Christie novel in the 20s that made fun of American law court speed, so.
But that said, I do think they stitched together what they had pretty well.
Yeah. And the other thing is that it was also the first sequence filmed. And so,
Yeah, it was a pall over the whole rest of it.
and so in a way, it's kind of a miracle the big movie even got made or released after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Spielberg was very vocal about what happened and what should be done.
Yeah, it wouldn't happen on his set, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, he had just did E.T. like a couple of years before that, so,
Mm-hmm.
you know, how he dealing with kids and filming with them.
Well, there's no reason, speaking as a child, and I know they couldn't stay at work at night as long as they could sleep the next day, but you shouldn't drop helicopters on them.
No.
Right.
That's definitely contraindicated.
And going back to what you said about Twilight Zone being on TV, it used to come on late at night, but I never thought of it as being scary. But Rod Serling's introduction was always scarier than the episodes. So.
He has a great speaker voice.
Oh yeah. Well, it was a running gag with my friends all the time. We would be hanging out someplace, and we would see something like strange, and someone would always pipe up, "If Rod Serling steps out, we're running."
You remember the episode with Keenan Wynn, I think, where he like basically like the Keenan Wynn character is like a writer, and they basically are playing with
It's
the.
one of my favorite
It's
episodes.
a really
Yeah.
clever bit. And it's sci-fi, I think, the last 10 years, every holiday they show Museum Marathon for it.
Oh yeah. There's usually, I think it's either Thanksgiving or New Year's.
Yeah, there's at least 1 or 2 holidays a year they show it.
Yeah.
And it's all on Netflix again. For a long time, the 4th season, the hour-long episodes,
Yeah.
were not available on Netflix because the rights were a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now they're back on there. So if you've not watched the Twilight Zone, or if you haven't watched it in a while, go back.
I think
And
it's on
it's
Paramount
so
Plus.
holds
Yeah.
up. Yeah, very much holds up.
Yeah, they're great little one-act plays.
Those are great writers.
Oh, fantastic
Oh, yeah.
writers. Rod Serling,
Charles Beaumont, didn't he?
Yeah, Charles Beaumont,
Charles
George
Beaumont,
Allen
who else? Richard Matheson.
Yeah.
So that's why so many early Star Trek episodes feel like Twilight Zone episodes.
Yeah,
Because
that
Gene
same
Roddenberry went up to Rod Serling and said, "How do you do it?" He goes, "Look, I don't work with the studios here. I go to literary conventions and I tell them to come with me and just adapt to television." Like, he got that ball rolling. He figured out the formula to raise the level of science fiction on television.
And I would love to see somebody do that again. I would love to see a new anthology series and get people like, Neil Gaiman, Brandon Sanderson. Let's get some
I'd
really
like to
good.
see some younger ones,
Or younger.
without a name, because these shows made names for these people.
True.
A lot of those people were coming out of doing short stories, because that was the big thing.
Amazing stories, all
Yeah.
those pulps.
And short stories just don't have the same market anymore, so it's tougher to rise up.
Mhm.
Okay, this is gonna sound like a joke, but I'm absolutely serious. Go to AO3. There are some amazing fanfic writers. And a lot of writers started with fanfic because that's where they learned their
There are a lot more anthologies recently because ebooks have no difficulty.
Mhm.
Because I know I've like my various, I buy too many books and read too many books, and they're always having special little anthologies, especially like for charitable purposes and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of people, because you're right, I mean, I'm old, and I used to do short stories, SF was short stories, and they'd be $5.
Well, there used to be-
You can keep up with all of them.
Back in the 50s, someone like
Yeah.
Charles Beaumont could make a living writing.
Yeah.
short
Yeah, I was
stories.
gonna say, that's
Yeah.
part of the issue, is
Playboy
that it's
and
getting
things like that,
written,
where
you-
it's just not getting produced.
Yeah, there used to be MZB had a zine, Asimov.
Yes, yes.
There were like 15
Some of the slip
different.
files did
They're like digest size.
Yeah, Playboy did original
Yeah,
fiction,
Playboy
and
did.
Omni did for several
Yeah,
years.
Playboy used to pay top dollar.
Yeah, Playboy paid well.
And all the top science fiction writers got published with them.
Stephen King got his start writing for Playboy and and some of the other.
It was Charles Moonlight also, he did a lot of stuff with Playboy,
There's
a lot of stuff
actually a
on
full
racing.
resurgence in
cars.
literary magazines right now.
Oh, good,
A lot of the colleges are starting to put new ones out.
nice. But yeah, there are writers out there, just find them. So.
Actually, if anybody's interested, Mick Sweeney's newest
Oh, yeah.
issue is a big horror, like multiple slipcases, it's really weird. It's like
Horror, you say?
And Brian Evanson is the editor, but he's got a lot of really good writers in there.
Most of my sales have been to electronic anthologies, and no, they don't actually pay a lot, but they are out there. And with electronic publishing, you can hit the niche market, something that, you know, you wouldn't make your money back if you printed it, but there are going to be enough people who like a particular thing that they'll buy the ebook.
And look for your small presses. There's Mocha Memoirs, which does a lot of LGBTQ and minority BPIOC.
Nicole Gibbons Curtis.
Yeah, Nicole Gibbons. Yeah, that's her book. There's Falstaff Books. I mean, there's a lot of really good indie publishers that are putting out good stuff.
And like you said, that'd be great if they would make anthology series off their stuff, indie stuff, rather than using.
And they'd actually be lovely for streaming because you wouldn't have to worry about their anthology shows independent. So it wouldn't matter if you hadn't watched episode 4, you could just watch 5 and catch up on 4
The
when you're back
closest
home.
one we have is Black Mirror now.
Yeah,
Black Mirror is like the modern Twilight Zone.
Very much is.
Yeah. Okay. Charlie Booker is one of my creative heroes, but man, he is grim. But it's like normal British people are pretty dour sometimes. He is just that. But it's why one of my favorite episodes though is the one with the Belinda Carlisle song. Now my brain doesn't want to. San Junipero. I want to go to digital 80s heaven. But yeah, that one is like, but yeah.
The recent one with the AI.
It's the one where they upload your brain, you get to spend your mind in a virtual reality. And you can choose to detach from your body and live there basically as a digital avatar. And
So many people would make that choice.
Not me, man.
So we got another one where
Not till my knees get worse.
somebody turns on a TV and sees her whole life.
Yeah, that
with a different actress. And
That
it's
one
just
is-
nested reality.
that one's hilarious, but the way it just keeps going nested. But the other one also I want to mention is, because I just thought of it, is Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities.
Oh, yeah.
Was
Oh,
very
that
good.
is.
That was very good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one.
I just want to mention the 1980s revival of Twilight Zone.
Mhm.
Hart Nelson was involved, and
Okay.
he did some really good short stories.
There are some episodes that are really good. And there's also, it's fun to watch as an artifact because there's a few people that at the time were no-name actors. That like Bruce Willis is in an episode.
Oh, Saturday, yeah.
Yeah, Saturday. It's fun. I don't know if that one's streaming anywhere though.
I don't know. Some of the episodes of Ray Bradbury Theater were pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
The Peter O'Toole Banshee episode is
I
really
believe this video ever love it. Sorry, they were a little cheesy, but
So-
I enjoyed them.
So if they were going to do another Twilight Zone the movie, what episodes would you guys want? Pick 4 episodes you would like to see them do.
Let's see, I'm gonna step out of this one.
Because you don't know
I
the show.
can't remember 4 episodes. Not the original series.
Okay.
You know, one of the ones I liked in the past, you can't do anymore because the punchline is everywhere, and that's To Serve Man.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I met
I like the
Richard.
one with Donna Douglas about beauty. That's a good one. It's still fairly valid.
Yeah, number 14 was just like
Oh,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if that was the right title or not because it's a Christmas novel. I wasn't sure.
That would be good. But I want to say, I met Richard Keel at DragonCon like 10 years ago. Sweetest man, but he had all the pictures of him as Jaws, whatever, but I got him as the Candyman. And it was the funniest thing in the world for me because I asked him to autograph it. And he picks up the pen, he starts to write, and he looks at me and goes, "You've seen it, right?" I went, "Yeah." He went, "Okay, good, I'm not going to spoil it." And then he signed it, and he went, "It's a cookbook." And I just love the fact that he took a second to go, "I'm not going to ruin the episode for you, right?" It's like, I appreciate the sentiment, but I don't think I'd ask you to sign it if I didn't know.
The one with Agnes Moorehead and the little spaceships.
Oh, yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
I
lot of fun.
Yeah.
But it's
And-
silent for the entire
Yeah.
time.
You know,
Except for the very
because at
end.
the ending, you're just like, your brain just refuses to like, what? You know?
But we knew 20,000, you know, terror at 20,000 feet, and I don't know why Just Serve Man wouldn't work if you had the right director. I think that's what made Twilight Zone work.
You know, that's.
Great directors who directed great episodes that
Yes.
you knew going into it.
I think you're right. I think that would be the biggest thing is not so much the story, but who directs each one. I
Yeah.
think, you know, it's like I would want to see Guillermo del Toro do one. I'd like to see Dennis Villeneuve. I mangled his name.
Denny.
Oh, Villeneuve?
Yes.
New City.
Yeah, give him an episode. Give.
I would want to see Alfonso Cuarón.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
I want to see Steel. That's one with Lee Marvin.
Steel. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
I don't know that.
It's a guy basically teaching. He's a boxer, and boxers are being replaced with robots.
Oh, yeah, okay, I think I've seen that one, but.
That one's good, and the other Lee Marvin one I love is the guy where he's the gunslinger, and he's
yeah.
killed a guy,
Yeah.
and the guy swears, "I will kill you at midnight, even though I'm dead." That is a great one of tension, and it's one of those ones where I'm like, "Oh right, Lee Marvin."
And they had a number of kind of Western episodes.
Yeah.
The one with the con man who says he can bring people back from the dead. You know the story about Phil Farmer?
Please enlighten us.
Well, Philip was a farmer. According to him, if you read a short story of his, I forget the exact title, you'll notice it's got the exact same plot as that episode. According to him, he was working on it and described the plot to his agent, who, for whatever reason, described the same plot to another writer as original, and let him use it for what ended up being a Twilight Zone script. A weird part of that is that the person credited for the Twilight Zone script doesn't seem to exist except for that script. Or at least I haven't been able to find any other mention of them. And other people have talked about that too. So it's probably somebody suing them.
Probably, because that did happen a lot. Yeah.
Remember the episode of William Shatner where they were in the diner with that little...
Yes.
Oh, the fortune telling thing?
Yes,
That's
so
a
I'd
good
like to see Quentin Tarantino
God.
take that one and have Chris Pine be the main character.
And you know the wife's gonna be wearing like flip-flops. If you know, you know. No, but, and there was somebody at Dragon Con who actually cosplayed that device,
Oh, that's
at
great.
Dragon Con one year, she had the big thing, she was wearing it, and she would actually hand out little,
That's cool.
Oh,
What was the one with Burgess Meredith? He was in like.
there were a lot.
Oh,
Give us a scene.
Time enough at last.
Yeah, time is
Class.
That would be a
Like, how would you
very good-
modernize that with a bunch of tablets?
You don't. You just redo it the way.
I finally have enough time, and then he's got no way to charge his Kindle.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, God, when you boot it up and it dies, it's like 1%. Oh, yeah, that would be tragic.
Ian Pulse took it all out.
I also, one of my favorite episodes, I think, which would be an interesting character study, and get, I would get Mike Flanagan to direct it. 5 characters in search of an exit.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, yes.
It's all the people
Yeah.
stuck in the
Oh, yeah, I had Keith Curtis and, what's his name, Wayne Wyndham?
Wait, when did we
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah, when he was.
I remember watching that one as a kid, and it just freaked
Absolutely.
me out.
Every time I saw Salvation Army being at Christmas time. Oh,
And then you reevaluate my toys. I'll be nice to you. Anybody who doesn't know, it's these 5 characters. And
Yeah.
there's a sailor, a
boy.
clown,
Ballerina, I think?
ballerina, and they're trapped in this big round room, and they're trying to figure a way out, and why they can't figure out why they're in there and what they're doing. And eventually they human pyramid their way up to push one of them over the edge, and he falls over the edge and he lands, and he's a doll.
Yeah. It's like the dark side of Toy Story.
Right, exactly. And the Salvation Army person goes, "Oh, one fell out," and picks it up and throws it back in. And the camera just kind of looks at them all down there, and you get the feeling that Rod Serling's looking at you going, "Uh-huh, yeah."
Kirby for fun, because there are all sorts of ways you could do it. I love the one with Andy Devine, where he plays this fellow who's always telling tall tales and ends up getting abducted by aliens who believe everything he says.
Oh.
They think he's the most amazing person on earth.
Yeah.
And he's able to get away from them by playing his harmonica, which causes them terrible pain. And so then something incredible has actually happened to him. Nobody believes him.
Yep.
Like
Yeah, it's
Galaxy
that whole-
Quest is the thing.
Yeah.
I like how the Art Carney was the kind of down on his heels Santa Claus.
Yes.
He found the magic bag.
Yeah.
I do remember that.
That one's a good one.
Yeah.
And then,
Oh, and then the one where was it Jim O'Malley does the sales pitch?
yeah.
Keep death away from the kid.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's in the first season.
I've only seen them in reruns, so I'm not that old. So I don't know when they showed up.
I just know because I'm obsessive.
Yeah, well,
Yeah. So we've got just a few minutes left. Is there any episodes or anything about the movie?
Well, I do think it was interesting, at that time, there was a Twilight Zone magazine
Yes.
that was being published. Like,
Yeah.
Twilight Zone was very much, people were aware of it. Twilight Zone was a thing in 1983. It wasn't like this movie was just a retro rehash.
was the new series reboot still happening or did it happen after?
It happens after this.
Yeah, it's 85, I think.
Yeah.
But
That
it's
sounds
been
right,
running for
85.
20 years, so everybody knew Twilight Zone.
But yeah, you're right. It's,
Unless you lived under a rock somewhere, you knew Twilight Zone.
Rod Serling invented something that I think we're talking about it 50, 80 years later, and I think we'll talk about it in 50, 80 years more. Because of the fact that it holds up, because it's about the character. It's not about the effects, it's not about the weird woogie aliens.
It's not about the effects, it's about the stories, the characters, and it's interesting when you analyze it. There's a wonderful book by Mark Allen Zickery.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the companion, yeah.
Oh my God, like that is
It's
just,
essential.
it's so, yeah, if you're a fan of this series. And it's interesting, previous to the 60s, stories that had a twist ending were called O. Henry endings.
Yeah.
Twilight Zone has hit everyone so hard that anything has a twist ending now, it's a Twilight Zone ending.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's real easy to parody that because Lord knows it's happened a lot, but it still holds.
And, well, Rod Serling is also just such a solid writer, especially dialogue.
Yeah.
And I'd actually like to see a Night Gallery movie, but that'd be a whole other panel.
Yeah. Night Gallery is a whole other panel because there are parts of it that are, anyway, I'm not going to get into it because we don't have time. But yeah, if you've not watched Night Gallery, watch it. It's not, I wouldn't say it holds up as well because it's very much it's very much of its time in the early
And
70s.
Serling didn't have as much control.
And he did not have, he was more just the host. I mean, there were a few that was, but again, we don't have time to get into that, but Twilight Zone holds up, and I really honestly think that if it hadn't been for that accident, we would have gotten a second one or a third one.
Yes,
Yeah.
just like we got another Creep show. Like there was a market for it.
Yeah, and that's, to me, one of the many tragedies.
You did get the other TV series though.
Yeah. Which again, I think, and I still love the opening of that first 80s Twilight Zone reboot. I love that opening sequence. With the way the skulls come in and out. The music is very creepy, and we get that little bit of touch of Rod there. Which sounds like a whole other panel.
Well, it's after 11, so.
But no, it's.
I don't think I'm ready for
not-
sexy Twilight Zone.
It'll be on Cinemax.
There should probably be a panel called We Don't Have Time to Get Into That.
Probably. We'll throw all those, we'll write down.
Speed
Okay, I'm gonna
dating
talk to
style.
Darren. I'm gonna talk to Darren.
Yes.
At Dragon Con, we do the roller panel, but this could be the version of it we do for Monsterama. We don't have time for that. But if you haven't watched the movie, watch it. If you haven't watched it in a long time, watch it and see if it still holds up. And even if the movie doesn't hold up, the show does.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the other thing. Is like I see so many people complain about why are they making a movie? Why are we doing this? They're ruining the original. Like, no, the original's still there. And if it gets more people to go back and watch the original, that's a win.
Yeah, if I can't sleep, I'll put on almost any episode of Twilight Zone.
I like the fact that it's black and white.
Yes.
That, unfortunately, certain younger demographic, they just won't watch anything in black and white. But I like the black and whiteness of it.
I also think it helps to hide the bad effects. It doesn't look cheap because it's in black and white. You can't see that.
It gives it an otherworldly quality that adds to it, I think.
I think it makes it kind of timeless, really.
That too, and that actually helps because you can't really place it in the universe.
I think since they were based on morals
Yeah.
rather than the time period, you're right, it makes them timeless. That you can show it at any point. It's the story, not the setting, that's important.
Yeah, they're all metaphors for
Yeah.
something. Because that goes back to what you said earlier. You can't talk politics on TV, but if you do it through an alien's mouth, do it all you want.
And make it black and white.
Yeah. And again, it's like, it's such a gamut, which is one of the other reasons I like the 4 stories that they did pick. It's like you said, Kick the Can is the sweet episode. The It's a Good Life is this is kind of scary. The 20,000 Feet is both funny and scary. I mean, so, and then the first one is the big moral lesson. So I think that's the reason they picked those 4, make a good through line of this is what Twilight Zone is about.
It's funny too, watching Nightmare Again. It holds up as a great story, but it's got so many of those anachronisms, like smoking on the plane, the co-pilot coming in and out of the cockpit. It's like, nope, that'd be locked as soon as somebody weird. Nobody gets in or out of there.
Yeah.
So it's sad that people are so locked down now on these things.
So thank you everybody for coming. It's Friday night. You could have been at the bar and you came here, and I appreciate that. We'll start at the end and come back to remind everybody who you are, where they can find you online, or what else you're doing this weekend.
Anthony Liggins, Fandom Hybrid Podcast. I will be here at 10 o'clock in the morning if you like Jurassic Park. We're going to talk about Jurassic Park. It's the 30th anniversary of Jurassic Park. It'll be fun.
I saw that. I was working a movie.
Those eyes are
out.
I was a senior in high school.
I hate you.
I just graduated from college when that one came out.
I was 32.
What year did it come out?
93.
The movie theater I worked at, we actually out of plywood built the arch. We built the stone and then the arch over. We put light, we put red heat lamps in for the torches. It was wild. It was.
If you like Jurassic Park, come tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. Right?
If you don't like Jurassic Park, come anyway. Have a good time.
And I'll be on a panel tomorrow night, really late, 11:30, on what makes games scary.
Oh.
I'll be here.
Good.
Oh, and tell them who you are and where to find you.
Build bridges, and just go to build-bridges.com and see all about me.
So will that be board games or video games?
Yes.
Good.
Or role-playing games.
Are there
Yes.
scary board games?
Games.
Oh, yeah.
No,
They're all
there's-
right.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
My favorite board game is a horror board game. The Trail at Midnight.
Betrayal.
Betrayal at the House of
Yeah.
Hill.
I thought it was going to say word.
No, it's not a game. That is a communication device. No, but
Well,
Betrayal at House of
if you
Hill.
believe it, if you don't believe it, it's a game then.
If you love legacy
It's like
games,
Wonder Bros.
Betrayal Legacy is amazing. You actually build the house and change it. We'll see.
It's a great, yeah.
And I am once again Gary Mitchel. You can find me at DirectCon and the American Sci-Fi Classics track. I am desperately trying to get a theater track happen at DirectCon. Yeah. And I'm the co-host of a podcast called Amontillado.
I really enjoyed the little bit she put on Facebook from a podcast of Amontillado.
Oh, thank you.
Almost all the time, I'm sure Sue thinks I'm like, what is she doing out there at the office? Because I'm always cracking up at night.
I'm glad you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Follow us on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Thank you for coming. Enjoy the rest of your time.